Hey everyone, it is Clint. Welcome to Sweetcast. Look at this. The subscriber count is growing like really fast. This is amazing. Thank you everybody. Remember how I just did a stream like a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I think exactly, where I passed 4,000 subscribers? Well, it looks like we're going to be 4,400 here pretty soon. So thanks. That's amazing. Okay, I think there's some misconceptions about what it means to be a comic book writer or how you become a comic book writer. And it sounds really basic level stuff, and I know we're going to go over a few things here on how to do that, but in truth there are some other aspects to it that you don't see people talking about very often that are comic book writers, and that is all of the political maneuvering that happens in comics in order for you to be friends with the right people, or on the right side of history or whatever else it is. But this has certainly become a thing, or at least it's a perception for a lot of aspiring writers or current writers for that matter. So if I look up becoming a comic writer, it's interesting because these are a lot of the same issues that we talk about all the time. Here's one from Kurt Eschenwald. He says, and this is old, by the way. He says, I condemned a comic writer at Image Comics for wishing an Afghan vet had died and celebrated conservatives' deaths. Then I got bombarded with outrage from comic book industry insiders. When did comics become evil political? And when did lunatics take over? I missed this event. Aha. So what you've stumbled into, Kurt, and again, this is old, but this is illustrating my point. What you've stumbled into is that whatever writer you were talking about, I'm not sure who it was in this case, a lot of people look up to and are hoping to get favors from, and whatever else it is. Okay, that's just the truth. They want to look good. And so once the first few crazy people started coming after you because of this, common sense kind of point of view, then you have the mob of wannabes or other people in the industry that are trying to look good or get a foot up or whatever it is, that are jumping all over you because it looks like that's the right thing for them to be doing at that point in time. I've seen this happen over and over again, even just in the past year. This happens all the time. Then you've got all these other people that think, that is my best chance of getting into comics, is being hyper political, hyper partisan. They're going to go crazy harping on that same note. All right, this is from the Tech Times. This is just a short list of writing, and I've had a lot of questions about this, especially recently in my endeavor to write comics. And so I wanted to share it with some of you and also add in some little secret things. Rule number one is to write. It makes sense, sound obvious, but it's really true. You're not paid for your ideas. This is a common misunderstanding that happens all the time. And I've had several people reach out to me with an idea. No offense to anybody, that this is just the hard truth. You need to hear it. They reach out to me with an idea and say, hey, I've got this idea. Do you want to buy it from me? Or I've got this idea. Do you want to take this? Could this be a valuable idea? Different kinds of things, and people really value these ideas. The truth is, having a good idea is great, but it's not worth very much. When you're writing, you have to come up with a lot of good ideas. It's kind of the opposite. Instead of having a good idea, a great idea, and valuing it so much that you're willing to just hold on to it, you got to keep it as it is. You have to be so willing to actually devalue those ideas, because you might think you have a great idea and you start writing a story and you run into a scenario where your idea doesn't really work. It's not making the plot make sense. It doesn't work with the characters that you've developed. You're finding out it's just not as amazing of an idea as you'd thought. Now, if you think that idea is so great that you're going to continue to hold on to it with a white knuckle grip, you're going to fail. In writing, they call this murdering your darlings. You love that idea, you think it's amazing, you have to be willing to devalue it and change it, cut it up, remove it completely, and be able to come up with more ideas on the fly. This is why, for me, writing a plot-driven story makes a lot more sense, because I can come up with an idea for a plot and I'm using some kind of story structure. I don't like it to be too tight and too formulaic, but having some kind of story structure there is important, and running through the practice of making a coherent story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, testing your ideas in that format it's really, really important. So you have to write. What you don't need is just ideas, and then you got to wait for an artist to do it. You should be writing first. Rule number 2 is finish what you write. That's a really good idea, actually. If you compared this to art, if all I did was work on drawing faces, for example, and that's all I spent my time doing, like that would be it then. I could do a comic full of faces and that would be it. Couldn't do anything else. And so you have to finish everything. So you're not just finishing a story, but you're also finishing the parts of a body, the parts of a story, making sure that you have all the right components in it. What's your emotional hook in that story? Does the story end? Is there a resolution? Endings are very difficult for some reason, for some set of reasons. And beginnings are very different or difficult for a different set of reasons. You know, are you writing all sorts of scenes? Are you just writing dialogue? Or are you not writing dialogue and you're just telling the whole story through some kind of narration? You got to complete it, not just by finishing the story A to Z, but also complete. Make the story have all the kinds of pieces that a good and compelling story should have. Believe in yourself and don't fear failure. Writing is a weird thing because you, at the same time, need to be extremely confident and also be very humble and willing to eat your own words, so to speak. Writing is something that absolutely everybody has an opinion on, even people that have never written anything in their lives. Writing is extremely difficult. It also tends to be very personal. And so for some reason, you put it out there and people basically tell you it's terrible. That is extremely hard to deal with, or it can be if you're not used to it. This is why writing groups are so important, because you get to hear feedback on the regular and figure out how to not take it personally and just look at your writing. I get that that's hard to do sometimes, but if you're not cocky enough, you're not going to be able to write that story and finish it without being paralyzed by fear. You've got to be able to finish it and get it out there and expect that it's going to get some kind of great reaction in order to get it out there. You're not going to succeed if you're held back by the fear. You've got to be able to push yourself forward and put it out there. Rule number 4, attend cons. This I'm not sure. I'm really not sure about. I know networking with people is important. There's some aspects of a cons that are important. It seems like, though, that if you're just attending cons, that's not really the point. So I personally would replace this with network with people, not just people that you might be in, business relationships with, but with readers, people that are actually interested in comics. So one way to do that is social media. I find social media to be extremely effective as long as you start following all the right people and just be social. Talk to people like you would anywhere else, including at a con. I look forward to being at a convention and talking about my comics and trying to sell some. I am interested in how that'll go. All right, so this is the end of the list here in Tech Times, but I'm going to add some of my own thoughts here as well. And that is that if you're going to be writing and finishing scripts, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to finish it off with art. That's really going to slow your process down. And if you're always waiting for the next project to get finished, as far as the art goes, then what that means is during that time, you're not writing. And so you're not improving. So it is important, and something I've really tried to make it a point to do is take on other writing jobs, big or small. Really, lately they've all been small because all the big stuff's been, stuff I've initiated. But taking on projects, working on writing, making sure that you're doing at least a little bit every day, different kinds of writing, especially for comics. Personally, I love to write in full script. I'm currently working on one that is intended for the Marvel method, which is kind of backward, where you just basically make an outline, the artist does the art, and then you go back afterward and add the dialogue. That for me is a very different process, but it is really fun, and I think it's important because it kind of stretches yourself in how you're able to write. Another thing I'd add is that, question that always comes up is, how do I find an artist if I'm a writer? You're going to keep looking for artists everywhere you can. I've actually had a lot of luck on DeviantArt finding artists, especially if you can save up a little bit of money and get those artists to do a story for you. My advice would be to write a very short story that you can pay an artist that has some, good quality art, not terrible art. But I think it's more important to tell a story that's short and punchy and have it complemented with good art than it is to tell a long story with bad art, unprofessional art. That's going to do two things for you. One is going to force you to write a short story, which is very difficult. It's more difficult to write a short story and limit yourself than it is to write a big story. But those short stories really, really help you tighten up your writing skills. And so you'll actually write longer stories better. Second thing it'll do for you is it will have, you'll have a finished piece to show people, even if it's only 8 pages long. And if you've done a good job and it's really punchy and it's got good art, you're gonna be happy to show it to people, and you'll get the good kind of reaction that you're looking for. This will lead into the next job and the next job and the next job. And as long as you're marketing yourself and be willing to write for free, it happens, then more doors will open up for sure. So if you're interested in checking out my latest writing endeavor, this is Downcast. We are nearing the end of our time here on Indiegogo. We've raised over $30,000. Thank you very much. If you have not backed it yet, don't be afraid to check it out. Back it. It's a really fun story. It's about blue-collar teens that use the power of gravity to fight their corrupt city for their father's life. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.